Far Post.
Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the Far Post podcast presented by Massachusetts 250, commemorating a history of possibility. Plan your revolutionary weekend at massachusetts250.org. I'm your host, Jeff Lemieux.
Boo. I boo you, sir.
Well, you can boo yourself.
I boo you.
Yeah,
I boo you.
The boos that you're hearing right now are for, if you're hearing them, are for
Boo.
Conlon and Jason Dalrymple, my co-hosts.
You just went from Massachusetts to Massachusetts in back-to-back sentences. There they are.
I think after the last podcast, when you pointed out that I said Massachusetts,
Yeah.
I think it got in my head, and then I tried to overcorrect. Whereas I really feel like I should just be myself.
You should but
say it the way that I say
have
it,
conviction, Jeff.
which apparently is more of a Z.
Yeah, Massachusetts.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's my thing. Maybe I'm the only one who does that.
Probably a weird capey thing. You all say it strange over there?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I don't even get into the Cape thing with you anymore because it just feels like I feel like it's hostility coming from your.
You've accepted your fate.
I really have.
Yep.
Well, look, as much as I would love to believe that the three of us and that me in particular are the stars of this show, and Lord knows I have some star quality. And
Yeah, I mean, it oozes off you. It really does.
I certainly think of myself as a star.
Yep.
I do understand somewhere deep down in the depths of my soul that the real stars of this show, the real stars of this program, are the guests. And once again, we have a guest today who the three of us are so old and or experienced, depending on who you talk to, that we worked with today's guest during his tenure with the Revs, which spanned 17 years in several different roles. Today's guest spent 9 seasons as a player, 2 as a color commentator, 6 as the club's head coach.
A bona fide club legend.
That only applies to one person, so if you haven't figured out who it is, are you even a Revs fan? It's legend Jay Heaps. Jay, welcome to the Far Post podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, man.
Thank you. That was a great intro. Thank you very much. I loved it. And you are the talent. Are you kidding me? I'm doing the show because of you, Jeff.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Jay, I appreciate that, man. I don't know if you remember, during your very brief stint as the Revs color commentator, one time you did get to actually interview me on a Revs broadcast, which must have been the highlight of your time as the color commentator.
I do remember that. I used to do the pregame interviews, and I did one I remember doing with Corey Gibbs, and I got my cat about to jump on here. I remember we'd always try to come up with new personalities, and had you just joined as like the first ever social, what was your exact role?
So my
got a bunch of roles.
My first 2 years, I started in communications, and then we started the digital department in 2010, shifted into a staff writer online host role. So you were interviewing me for that. I mean, they must have been digging really deep.
Interviewed you on the broadcast?
They were digging.
Wow.
They were digging deep.
Those are dark days.
I gotta find that in the archives.
Holy
somewhere.
moly.
Yeah.
What did you talk
about this?
I think it was just my journey to the job. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember Twellman was up in the stands because we shot it pregame, and Taylor was like up in the club yelling down, being like, "You're interviewing that guy?" Yeah, actually, that's the appropriate reaction in this situation. Well, Jay, you are now, to update people, president and general manager with Birmingham Legion USL Championship. So you've had, at this point, virtually every job that you could hold in the professional soccer space. You've been a player, you've been a coach, you've been a commentator, you've been a president, you've been a GM.
Yeah.
Which of those jobs is the most stressful? I love the cat. Let's get the cat in here.
The cat's popping. He's also popped in on a few other podcasts because when he knows I'm sitting here, I can't do anything. Once I do Zoom, he's like, "Oh, I'm in on this." The most stressful is without a doubt coaching, and it's more so because you've worked the whole week is very process oriented, and then when the game starts, you really have got to as Jay, remember my assistant coach Jay Miller, he's like, the hay's in the barn. It's like it's there. So no matter what happens at that point on, you've prepared, you've got this. So a lot of different things can happen in the game, and you got to be prepared for it. But so for me, my favorite part of the job still to this day is probably the weekend lead up into coach, like when you're coaching and you're kind of doing your process. And then the most stressful you are is on game day when you want your team to perform the way you train, the way you work, and the way they're ready to go. Might get a red card, might get a goal against, might be a VAR situation. Next thing you know, you're pivoting and trying to react. But the reality is that to me is the most stressful that I've ever had. And it's a drug. But the wins are the best too when you're the head coach. So that's why it's the highs and the lows of that position.
What was worse, doing interviews as a head coach or doing interviews as a player?
Head coach.
Yeah.
Player, you can like justify something, right? Like I played that ball really well, but even though as a coach, you might, and I had said to every coach, you may have had a perfect training week, but get blown out 3-0 because, bad goal, red card, something didn't go right. Even though that was your best week of preparation, it just fell apart on that one, that scenario. And I would say there's a few, obviously when stuff gets tight, I won't say what I would normally say, but when stuff gets tight, taking that, you've seen it, Jeff, when you got a room full of people asking you, are you safe? Is your job safe tomorrow? That's always not such a great interview.
I remember, obviously I spent about 7 years interviewing you as you were the head coach. And there was this really delicate balance because like I would be interviewing you on a weekly basis, but I'm also a club employee. So like we're trying to get stories to tell the fans and keep them informed, but you're also always trying to do it from the most positive angle possible. So it was
you did well. You did well. And I was probably, because you were you there? Yeah, you saw Stevie's, and Stevie we were more intimate probably because I was probably more open than Stevie on certain things, right? Like you were also behind enemy line. You saw a lot more too.
I do remember. I feel like one of my favorite instances, there was a time at one point Juan Agudelo had pulled his hamstring, and we were told, like we got the information, Juan Agudelo pulled his hamstring. He's going to be out about 6 weeks. That wasn't public information, but we knew that's about how long he's going to be out. And you kept getting asked every single week, like, oh, is there an update on Juan Agudelo? Like, how's Juan doing? You'd be like, yeah, a little bit of a hamstring injury. We're just monitoring him day to day. And then you'd get asked about it again next week. Like, oh, any update on Juan Agudelo? You get, hamstring, just, continuing to monitor him day to day. And it got to a point where you were like, why do these idiots keep asking me about Juan Agudelo every week? And I was like, well, because you keep saying he's day to day. If you just tell people out 6 weeks, then they'll leave you alone.
Listen, you know how it is over there. Back then, that was the Bill Belichick time. That was like every licks or steal. You don't say anything that's going to get you.
Yep.
That's going to impact some type of game planning against you. So you always wanted everyone available, even if they weren't. That's funny.
We were able to host the club's first ever alumni night in August, and I know the night of alumni night when the Revs hosted DC United and we were able to honor all the players on the field. You weren't able to be there that night because you were with Birmingham. I think they had a game in Hartford that night. But you were able to join the group at dinner the night before. And I'm sure that was probably the first time that you'd gotten a lot of those guys together in the same room, maybe since you had retired in 2009, unless you've had some impromptu get-togethers on your own since. But what was that like for you, getting a bunch of those personalities together for the first time in probably 15 years or so?
Yeah, it was unique in that everything you just talked about and the kind of different roles I had, someone was from one point along the way, right? There was, guys you went to battle with when you were players. I mean, Avery John being there, and obviously Taylor Twellman, Doug Warren, those guys well, but I've stayed in touch with them. I hadn't seen Avery in a minute. But then you had, someone like Alexi Lalas was there, and I've never been a teammate of his, but he was always, one of the first Revs players. But we were always, on the field, kind of going against each other, but really enjoyed them off the field. And then we had some of the players that I coached there, right? Guys that I helped kind of either draft or bring or sign. And McKellen Rowe was there, Scott Caldwell, two of my favorite players I ever had play for me. And then some of the players that were, after I kind of had been, let go. So it was really a unique room to be in. But as the night kept going, you started to hear some of these stories. Now you remember when our run of time there, with Twellman and Joe Max Moore, I mean, that really went from here comes the cat popping his head in. I tell my stories. That was a fun time to kind of have everyone kind of connect around that time, because we stretched a good bit of time across, and we had some, we missed Joe Franchino and Rusty Pierce, but we did have some good Joe Franchino and Rusty Pierce stories to tell, which was always fun.
Are there any of those stories that are appropriate to share in the context of the Far Post podcast? Because we had Steve Ralston on the show a few weeks ago.
Which one did he say? Did he say?
We got an Osei story. And he told the free kick story, which is such a classic story of Osei running up and hitting that free kick out of nowhere. So we were able to pair that with the video, which was fantastic. But I'm wondering,
was it as bad as we thought? I have never seen the video. Were we overreact? I mean, I literally was like, I've been on this team for 9. I don't think I've never been asked to take a free kick. I certainly never stole a free kick.
I was going to say, Emmanuel Osei never got asked to take a free kick either. He took it into his own hands. No, so
Steve Ross was the best free kicker in the league.
And Raleigh remembered it the way that I remembered it, which was that he had blasted it like 40 rows over the bar. He actually hit the wall.
Yeah, he hit the wall. I'd forgotten he hit the wall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
but when he hit the wall,
it
went so high up in the air after it hit the wall that it probably looked like it went that far because it went way up in the air. The video's on our Instagram if you want to see it.
But I know that it was right into halftime after that, though. I think it was like the time must have been. That's what I remember being like right near halftime. So that's why I think it didn't happen in the 20th minute. So like you have the rest of the half to finish going. It was halftime because I went into halftime in the red. I can remember that.
I don't know who's standing with Ralston over the ball.
I think it's Tierney.
And they just look at each other when Osei comes in from out of nowhere and blasts it. They just sort of stand and look at each other like, what just happened?
But it's like, in that moment, I when we were talking to Raleigh, he said, it's not like anyone ever really had conversations with Osei. He obviously was such an enigma, and he stayed so to himself. But like, does someone even go up to him at halftime and be like, what the hell just happened? Or you just let it be?
I definitely did. Yeah. I definitely, 100%. I definitely did multiple times. That was one, right? Because you're right. He was kept to himself, but we played in the back line together, and he and I probably got along really well. We did get along really well on the field, but that one really frustrated me. I was only because I was the only thing I had was I could jump. So I was always someone that was like, the play was designed to get the ball to me to head back to somebody else. That was kind of the play. And we worked on it all week in training and all months in training. And then this guy comes flying out of nowhere, shoots the ball at the wall. Yeah, no, I remember I was kind of it was funny. Shari was, usually the club captain, or Steve Ralston, and both of them, I'd argue, were great captains because they didn't scream and yell or kind of confront. And I was a little bit more direct confrontation. So yeah, I definitely said something to Osei. I will say and I brought up this trip that was the one on Rusty, and you can ask him the story, but you gotta remember, this was my first time joining the team. I was at practice, and this is when we practiced at Foxborough High School, or the field behind. The Patriots did too, but this was before Gillette was built. That's how old this is.
Payson? Was it Payson?
There was at one point Payson Park was one of the places that you guys trained.
Yes. Yeah. And there's two. I can tell one of the stories. I probably can't tell the other one, but there was also an insane asylum park next to it, which was
that's Payson. Yes,
asylum that had to be like cut down, and I could probably tell that story later. But this was my first experience with Rusty Pierce. We get to practice, and I just come from Miami. So in Miami, there was, at the time, Pablo Mastroeni, Leo Cullen, Tim Sahadak, Nick Raimondo. Like, we were all a bunch of college kids, and we all hung together, and we were all really close. And I joined the Revs, and Rusty doesn't like how training's going. And so this is what you remember over there. And Fernando's like, Rusty, that's the last time. He must have kicked someone really hard and said, you're out of practice. So Rusty took every ball and kicked it out of the entire practice area. And he goes, if I can't practice, no one practices. And I was dumb. I couldn't believe it. There was, in my mind, I thought, this can't happen. Like, who's gonna say something? And it was as if, I looked at Andy Williams, and he actually said to me, I said, what are we doing? He's like, this happened last week. It wasn't the first time. And everyone kind of accepted it, and it went off on the rails. And then we all ran and got the balls, put them back, and finished practice. And no one said anything to Rusty. I'll tell you, I learned, I didn't know why no one said something to him. And then I became the person to start to confront him, hence why he and I had a couple of instances. I enjoyed Rusty quite a bit, but he was intense, and if you went at him, it was not going to be a verbal conversation for very long. It was going to turn physical pretty quick.
So when Revs fans back in the day would hear descriptions of Rusty Pierce as a hard-nosed defender, that was somewhat accurate.
Beyond, yeah, he was hard. He was hard.
My
he didn't
God.
mess around. He would kick people in training as hard as he would kick people in the games. Sometimes harder in training.
Now, when you guys went and got all the balls back, did he stay in training, or was he out of training?
He was gone. He got his car. Back then, remember, you had to get in your car and leave. And I think he as a matter of fact, this could be my memory of it. It may have happened on him. He didn't have the person who he rode over with still was training, so he walked back.
That's a long walk.
Yeah,
it's a good walk.
It's a good walk.
It was about, but back then you used to cut through the. You used to be able to cut through the back where the backside.
Jeez, I know too. Throughout the course of that alumni dinner, and this is a conversation that we did have with Steve Ralston a few weeks ago. I know the naked guy on the plane story must have come up because when Raleigh told the story, he obviously knew all the details, but he also said, "Look, I was in the back of the plane, so that whole commotion, the whole situation happened towards the front." Yep. I didn't really know what was going on until we emergency landed in Oklahoma City and we sort of got the rundown.
Was Raleigh not playing cards with us?
He said he was in the back playing cards and he really didn't know what was going on. But I was just wondering what your perspective was on that whole situation.
I saw a guy come out of the airplane fully naked, walking down the middle of the aisle. Because we were playing cards in the middle and I happened to have a seat on the end. And I said, I think that guy's completely naked. And everyone was like, no way. And we sent a rookie. Who did we send down? So we sent someone down. This was a huge plane. So it was like 4 on each side or 3 on each side. Who did we send? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think if it was who we sent down there. It was definitely a rookie. Could have been like Adam Chrisman maybe if he was on that. It could have. I feel like it was something like that because they went down and looked to the. I remember he went sat on the right and he looked back and was like, he's completely naked because he had decided to lay on his side with a blanket over him, but not covering his kibbles and bits.
God.
So that was I was like, holy cow, guy's naked. We missed the commotion part. That's where I think Raleigh was like, because I know he was naked because I saw everything, and I remember like you saw next thing you knew they made him go back to the bathroom to get changed. And that's when he came out, changed, and went directly toward the so 20 minutes had gone by before he started pulling on the thing. And that's where Mike Burns was sitting. So Mike, had probably the best seat in the plane. We were in the way back. He was a nice GM, gets the front row.
That's you now.
What's that?
That's you now, right?
Yeah. But he grabbed them. Mike was one of the first people to grab him. Mike has a much better shot because Mike stopped. Mike, at the time, we all, obviously this was like 2 years after 9/11. And that was a little scary. But he started grabbing this thing, and someone pulled him off, and then Mike and them held him the whole rest of the way. And that's when we landed into. We landed halfway there. My favorite part was when the I guess the FBI or SWAT came on and they took him off the plane. Did Raleigh tell you about that part?
I don't think so. No, he talked about getting to LA and TMZ cameras and stuff.
Oh yeah, and when we got off, we thought we were stars. We didn't realize that it was for that reason. But this cop. I'll never forget the kid was, now they got the kid handled like this. And the cops, we were landing, so we did that emergency landing, and these cops were on the plane and they wanted to get the plane back up. They took this guy off. When I say his head must have hit every chair on the, I just kept because they just dragged him. And it was about he was probably seat 15. He hit 14 seats on his way out. And they got him off the plane. And we were on the ground for maybe 10 minutes. And then we were back up, max. Land, get them off, and we were back on our way.
Was there any sort of explanation to you at the moment, or were you just trying to piece all this together yourself? Did they get over the loudspeaker and be like, "Hey, here's generally what's going on"?
Yeah, we knew we were landing. Yeah, we knew we were landing. We just didn't know that he tried to pull that. And then Mike had kind of talked about us. So by the time we got to LA, we all tackled him ourselves. He was clearly naked when we tackled him. He was definitely naked, but they definitely made him go change because when I saw him naked and he was naked, but when he pulled the gate, he had most of his clothes back on.
You sound like with the number of times you've mentioned that you still have that image burned in your head, that you can still see straight down the aisle of the plane.
Yeah, I could probably do an image reprint if I had to. They call me in. That
obviously has to be the wildest travel story that you have from throughout your time with the Reds. But are there any other? We're losing a little bit of the novelty of the wild travel stories because obviously now, as necessary, Major League Soccer has moved to full-time charter travel. So you're not getting quite as crazy a travel experience on a week-to-week basis as during your time when everything was commercial travel. But do you have any other wild travel stories, anything that even rivals Naked Guy in the Plane?
No, not nearly that. But there was one our very next LA trip, because remember, used to go there at least twice. There was there was the next one. I was sitting in my seat, and I was, and I'll never forget, she was from Australia, and she was sitting next to me on the right, and she was probably, a little bit younger than me at the time. So if I was 26 or 7, she was 23 or 4. And a guy came over and was like, and I was already trying, every time we got on the plane, we all had our seats. We usually all had aisle or window, and we'd be trying to trade them for like a whole row. So we'd have 2 rows and we'd have the cards going. So there'd be 3 and 3. And so I was looking back to figure out where we were going to do this. So a guy tapped me on the shoulder, like, hey, would you like to switch with me? I'm back then. I'm like, absolutely. And as I bent to go up to switch, she grabbed my arm. And I'm like, and she had that, and I just had a look, and I said, I'm going to stick it out. He's like, you're not going to change seats. And so we had a little bit of somewhat of a confrontation, but he had put his bag up before she'd kind of realized that I'd realized this. So I was like, and he's like, you're not going to move? And I'm like, nah, I'm going to stay here. I'm just going to ride it out. As we kept going, right, so now the flight's in the air, and now he's like, and I didn't realize what she ended up telling me was that she had been drinking in the bar, and he had come over, and he was not all the right. He was certainly, he just obviously had I think he was having a medical, like a chemical imbalance a little bit. I think he drank and then he didn't take his medicine, whatever it was. He was a little bit off. And she's like, I'm really scared. And I'm like, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. And then he came running by and got his bag really aggressively. And so Marshall Leonard and I had to stand up and like, hey, and Marshall, I've never heard Marshall yell like this before. He's like, hey, you need to back up. Because I went to go grab his bag. And this is all you gotta remember, this is all post 9/11, early years after that. So every time we flew, we were all a little bit more on edge than we had been previously. But that was the only time, because then that girl, I remember she was super sweet, but she cried the entire plane because they had to take this guy and they had to tie him down in first class. Oh. And that was it could have been within 9 months of that other flight. So instantly, I'm like, oh, we're not going to LA anymore. These kids have lost their minds. Do we have to go this way?
That's why they didn't change to charter travel immediately after that. You just throw those 2 stories out there and be like, look, if you're looking for a reason for the league to need to change to charter travel, we got a couple pretty good examples.
Yeah.
Well,
I paved the way. I paved the way. I never rode on one, but I got to pave the way.
It's
I
nice.
don't know. We had a good charter story when the Crafts let us use their 2 planes.
I say you did get to occasionally, there were 2 flights a year you could decide which planes you wanted to use or which legs you wanted to use for charter travel. So that was the MLS Cup, the MLS 2014. We did it. That was my favorite one. Was when we took both planes to New York for the game, and then both planes back after we beat New York to then come back for the second game. That was a memorable trip. I was on the bus for that one. The bus ride was memorable as well.
Yes.
I can
bus
vouch for that.
Memorable for some of us.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Not memorable for some of us also. Yeah. Some of us didn't make it out of Massachusetts.
Just not as memorable, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, during your tenure as both a player and even as a coach, but I think more so during your tenure as a player, there was one Jay Heaps factoid that came up more than any other factoid. And every single time, I don't think we ever got through a 90-minute game or any feature that involved a Jay Heaps quote without mentioning one particular factoid. Do you know what factoid? It seems like you might know what I'm referencing.
Yeah, that I was voted the best looking player that year.
Yeah, it came up so often. You have no idea.
Oh, shoot. I think it was, it was probably Duke basketball, right?
Yeah.
Basketball.
Jay Heaps played basketball.
Vertical leap, one or the other. There was one of those 2 always. Yep.
Jay Heaps played basketball at Duke University, and every single time you went up and won a header, hey, Jay Heaps not the tallest guy in the world, but he can jump, and you know why? Because he played college basketball at Duke University. Did you ever get sick and tired of the Jay Heaps played basketball at Duke? I mean, because that got pounded into the ground.
Yeah. I only got sick of it because my only joke back was I sat more than I played. They'd always be like, oh, you played basketball? They're like, well, I sat more than I played. And that joke that response got run out to the point where my wife at one point was like, it's enough. You don't need to say that joke anymore. It's you have to retire that response. I was proud of it, but it got to a point where I think earlier in my career, they were like, you only can do these certain things. And, because you can jump, you're an athlete, where's the soccer in this? And I think I tried to be like, hey, I'm more than just an athlete. Hopefully I'm getting better every week as a defender, which I wasn't a defender in college. That would be my more so. They said that I was a center midfielder and a center forward in college, and they moved me to right back in my first professional game ever after training all week as a center midfielder. And I started my very first game at right back. This is back when I was in Miami, but it got to a point where it was a little bit probably overplayed. But they did do it. My favorite though was Coach K was great, and we did that that docuseries where we kind of it was a 20-minute kind of behind the scenes, which was fun. I saw Coach recently, and he thought he ended up getting it back, and he loved it because it told a good story about how that was my thing as being a coach now was that. I was, never played, couldn't, very rarely played, but I was still impactful to some of the players that did. Now, the teams are smaller. You only have, 10, 12 guys on a team. But that was my thing is that you don't have to be the starting player to make an impact, right? You could be one of these people off the bench. And I thought that was, that he enjoyed that that was what came out of that documentary. I think that it was how he impacted me, even though I was not a player, and then how I impacted some of the players, because the Shane Battier stories, real. I mean, that 100% happened where, Coach K was like, Shane, what are you doing? Like, you're missing every one of these. And you got this guy who's player of the year for soccer working his butt off to get you shots after I could be doing anything else. And I remember Shane Battier like taking that, being like, oh, I got to step up my game. And then he ended up winning a player of the year, which was kind of a cool story. But player of the year in one sport kind of hopefully jump-started him onto an unbelievable career. And I say jump-start, that's way too much, but at least you had to take a moment to be like, shoot, I got to get better at these jump shots if I want to play more basketball.
Well, I appreciate that you played basketball at Duke because we, on one road trip, I don't remember what city we were in, but one of the hotels we were staying in had like half an indoor basketball court. And we went and played a little bit. We played some knockout.
I
remember that.
Now I can tell people that I played knockout against a Duke basketball player. And that's a story that I now have for the rest of my life. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Good. That was Colorado. Can you believe that? I don't know how we were allowed to do that on probably night before the game. Trying to dunk the basketball. Not our best.
Why not?
Taylor Twellman pulled a hamstring.
It wouldn't be the most ridiculous player got injured story. Maybe in Revs history, but certainly not in sports history.
Oh no!
An NHL player just got scalded.
There are multiple players that have been scalded by boiling water in recent times.
It's crazy.
Yeah, paramedics. I remember him. He was cooking up in Vancouver, and he got burned.
Did that happen? I don't. That vaguely. That's like jogging a little bit of a memory now. Yeah. Wow. I do remember. I think the first time that I ever heard the Jay Heaps played basketball at Duke story, it might have been your first professional goal. When you were playing for Miami, it was like a header at the back post. You went. I think it was I don't know who you were playing against, but I think it was a 2-2 draw, and you scored a late goal, like a header at the back post. And I remember them being like, Jay Heaps, he can jump high because he played basketball at Duke.
Yep.
And now here we are.
That was my first professional game against Metro Stars. They were the Mike Pecky, Steve Jolly. That was a tough crew.
Well,
Tony Miola, I think, was a keeper.
Only ended up spending a couple of years in Miami, and then obviously spent the vast majority of your playing career with the Revs. And as we mentioned off the top, you were unquestionably a legendary figure in this organization. Still at this point, top 10 all time in appearances, starts, minutes. I was looking through all these stats, and it probably won't shock you to know that you are also still currently tied as the all-time leader in yellow cards.
As much,
Do you have any idea how many yellows you would have had over the course of a 9-year Revs career?
7.
7 per season would be a little bit closer, I think, to the actual number.
I know this. I had more yellows than goals. How's that? I use that.
You did indeed. If you had as many goals as you had yellows, you'd be like third all time. You had 50 yellows during your regular season Revs career. You are tied with one of your former teammates for most yellows all time. Do you have an idea which teammate might be tied for most yellows all time?
Shalry.
You and Shalry, 50 yellows apiece, tied for most all time.
Wow.
But here's the stat that actually blew my mind. Do you know how many regular season red cards you had in 9 years with the Revs?
1.
No, 0.
1. Well, you're listed as 1 in the...
I know I had 1 in the playoff game. That was my lowest moment of all time. I'll tell that story. That was insane. I don't know. But what was my red card during the regular season? Was it at DC?
I honestly, I would have to check. I know you had 1 in the regular season.
DC. Me and Bobby Convey went to the ground, and yeah. I didn't have many reds. I usually, because that was the thing. I knew how to get to this point. Yeah.
Clearly a master of riding that line. To have 50 career yellows and only 1
that's
career
good
red
is
pretty incredible.
All right. Yeah. I like that a lot. You're right. That is that. Yeah. And I had it. Look, I remember yellows were, it was, you could get a yellow card. I mean, red cards were not far behind yellows. So once you had a yellow back then, I felt like they wouldn't go back. There was no VAR back then, right? So you weren't getting, you had to make sure you were, a good dive could get you a second yellow pretty quick.
What percentage of your yellows were for hard tackles and what percentage were for,
discussing my opinion?
Discussing your opinion.
I think earlier it was, what's funny is I thought I was very obviously a hothead, and I'm pretty passionate about it. And the one thing I still to this day hate more than anything is when I feel like there's a bias, right? And so that's where I lose my mind when the referee, I feel bad because I see a few of them now, crazy enough, they're doing college games and bouncing around, and they'll say the same thing, like, you had an opinion, that you were pretty adamant about what you were saying at the time. And I'm like, I was, because I truly believed it, so that was probably why. But I don't know. Back in the day, they didn't give a ton. I think I'd get some fouls. I would get a yellow after I had just said my opinion, but they wouldn't give it. And then at the end, I remember you wouldn't, because they started to tie fines to your yellow cards. So if you got a yellow card for for I guess verbal confrontation, they would give you like a $50 or $100 fine. And back then, that was a lot.
Yeah.
So 50 yellow cards, and if they were for half for yapping, I'd be in big trouble. But there were a few. There were a few. There was definitely. Put it this way, I don't think there was ever. I think there's. I don't know if I got enough of them for yapping, but the referee followed up pretty quickly with a soft yellow if that was the case.
And we'll go back to 2. I know you mentioned there's a story around one of the other reds. You only had a couple other reds. You had one in the playoffs, and there was actually one in Superliga, which in the Superliga semifinal, which I remember being ridiculous. Sorry. Yeah. No, you're good.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
That's what the show's for. Was that like
that's
the,
what
was
I got
that
the
most
red card
ridiculous
for saying
one?
This is bullshit. That's what I literally. That's what I got the red card for after we won.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a bunch of BS, and the referee said you swore and gave me a red card for that. Meanwhile, there had been multiple F-bombs all over the game.
I think I remember vividly the look on your face when that red came out, and it was like, me? But I'm wondering too, obviously as a head coach, you've got that fourth official who it feels like 95% of the fourth official's job at this point is basically to just take abuse from both head coaches throughout the course of the game. That's all around the world. Were you the type of head coach that a fourth official hated to have, or did you have like a method of being like, you know what, let me try to butter up an official? Like, what was that dynamic like? Yeah,
I tried it all, and never really successful. A little sugar, a little vinegar. It's funny because you get to know the fourth officials, and you start to kind of understand them. And I always felt like it was never the fourth that I was. Maybe one, or if I was getting in trouble. Remember, we didn't have yellow. I only think I got run from one game in my coaching career, and I remember that I got run. Not for that game, but Jorge, the referee, came over. He was the fourth, and I said something like, hey, are you really going to give yellow for that? And they threw me out. And I remember Tommy Sohn, my assistant at the time, goes, oh, that was not from today. Like, that was clearly from the game before and the game before. And that's after the game, and I saw him in a time. I'm like, that came from like a referee's like redoing their kind of game. They're like, that kid needs to be sent. And it was like the 85th or 90th minute. I didn't say anything. And then I went off on the way out, and then I got double fined because I couldn't believe they were throwing me out for that. But we didn't have yellow cards. I would have given anything for the back in the day. It was either a quick little warning or you're gone. So I think giving yellow cards actually opens up more it allows for a referee to get more abuse sometimes.
Yeah, because 3 yellows at this point will get a coach suspended, but there are yellows, and there's a system to get a coach suspended just through yellows.
But it's also you're also like the boundaries of what a yellow.
Yeah. Wow,
normally a yellow card would have been out, so that would have been 3 suspensions for that. Is really what it would have been. If a referee was coming all the way over to have that conversation with you, I will say, yeah. So the worst red card though was the playoff game red card, the one that I got when we went to MLS Cup in 2002. And that was my favorite. I had a goal, a yellow card, and a straight red card in the first 18 minutes of that game, or whatever it was, first 25 minutes. Like it was.
We call that the Jay Heaps hat trick.
Heaps hat trick, yeah.
Straight red, yellow, and a goal. It was, and we won 1-0. And what happened was, I remember I was pretty fired up. We were up 1-0, and I had the ball, and this guy, I think his name was Freddie Garcia. I had the ball, and it was just my instinct. He reached for it. I kind of gave him a little headbutt, and I didn't. He reached in, and I got him, but not the way he reacted. But it was enough contact for me, like, and I got red carded. And I remember thinking, how bad was it? Because back then we didn't plan on replay, and I was just kind of like going through. A game was over. We won, thank goodness. I had to go sit up and watch the game with Sunil Gulati after getting red carded for another 70 minutes of just kick the ball out. We won 1-0. I had the game-winning goal, but I sat up everyone was like, "Oh, you enjoy the cigarette?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, all it took was one breakthrough, and Sunil was probably going to cut me that day. I mean, because it was who gets a red card to play. I mean, I would have. And Steve Nicol, my favorite coach, Steve Nicol after the game was like, "Lad, you were too fired up," but that was it. I didn't get yelled at, nothing. He was just like, "You learned a lesson." I go, "I learned a." So I was a little bit worried that I was going to get additional game suspension, because what happened was at that time you had 3 games. So the next game was I think we tied the first game against Columbus, and then we went and beat them in Columbus, and then you still had to win by a certain number of points. And so we had to play them again at home. So I was suspended for that game. But at the time, there was concern they were going to give me more than 1 game. And everyone was like, "Nah, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad." And so that night I went to bed. I woke up and like right before 1 a.m. Remember I used to do Just Sports Center? And the lead-in was things got hot in MLS, and just showed me slow motion. Oh, man. Wow. It was brutal.
I had my first talking to by a referee this season.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What'd you do? Kick the boards?
He
you
thought
don't have those boards anymore.
He thought I was returning the ball to the opposing team a little too quickly and forcefully. So he gave me a talking to.
Did he?
Yeah. Yeah. Stop the game to come reprimand me. Yeah.
Was it emphasis on too quickly or too forcefully?
He told me it's not my job to return the ball. That's all he told me. I said, fair enough.
They being really slow on the plays I was having, they were slow playing it on you guys. Every time the ball went out.
Exactly. And the keeper stitched me up. He got me nice because he gave me a little nod, like he made eye contact, so I lobbed the ball, and then he turned around, so we hit him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so the second time, the referee was like, "All right, we got to nip this in the bud."
Yeah.
Imagine if he'd gone down. It's just the ball hits him and he goes down.
Who was it? Who was the keeper?
Galassi, Orlando.
Oh yeah. Oh, Oh yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, that was on the broadcast and everything.
Yeah. It was a great moment for me.
I gotta go back. You guys send me I want to see that one. That's fun.
Well, I have to get this story in because it's one of my favorite memories during my entire time with the Revs, and it centers on, Jay, an interaction that you had with the referee. And I don't know if you're going to remember this one. This is 2013. This is when you were the head coach. 2013 U.S. Open Cup against the New York Red Bulls at Harvard. So for Revs fans.
I remember the game. Yeah. I remember the game. Yeah.
Is that the one they were late to, that one?
That might have been the game that the Red Bulls were late to. Yeah, that might have been that game.
Referees were late. The Rebels were late. There was traffic getting to the game. Yep.
So what's great about those Open Cup games played at those smaller venues is, especially for someone like us who normally, my experience at Reds games is being in the press box. We're 9 stories up or behind glass. You can't hear anything. At an Open Cup game, we're getting a totally different experience like that because we can hear all of the interaction on the field between the players, between the refs and the players, between the coaches and the players, and between the coaches and the refs. And Fabian Espindola was on the New York Red Bulls.
Yeah, that's right.
And he was either offside or got flagged for a foul by the linesman.
Yep.
He goes over to this linesman, and it was the linesman who was on the line next to your bench. So this was down the side you were on. And he unleashed 15 seconds of abuse, the likes of which I have never heard in my entire life. I've never heard someone spew anything so vile and heinous in such a short amount of time. And the referee came over and gave Espindola a yellow.
Yeah.
And I remember you looking at the ref and being like, yellow? And you looked at the linesman and you said, my God, have some respect for yourself. And that was 12 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I will never forget it.
I was hoping you brought that up. Like, I was right there for that, too. It was like, I cannot believe the things that guy just said. I wouldn't even repeat them ever.
It was insane. It was because he was also, remember, I hate to say it, but he was also like known to be like a little off the reservation.
Yeah.
Would go off and like, he had plenty of red cards. But he unloaded on that. I remember thinking, "Oh, this is gonna be great. We're gonna gonna be up a man." I was dumbfounded that guy didn't get a red card. I remember the play because remember he came right in front of our. It was right in front of our bench.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't even. You could tell too in the tone of your voice that the have some respect for yourself wasn't even necessarily like, I can't believe you didn't send him off. It was like, I actually am genuinely concerned for you that you need to have some more respect for yourself. Unbelievable. Well, we're gonna start to wrap things up here, but I do have just one more thing I wanted to ask because it's something that we had talked about when you made the transition from player to color commentator to head coach. There was a pretty short bridge between your time with the Reds as a player and then the head coach. There were only 2 seasons in between. So there were some players, not a ton of players, because there was quite a bit of turnover from 2009 when you retired to 2012 when you took over as a head coach. But there were players who you had been teammates with in 2009, and then you were their head coach in 2012. And I can imagine that being a really difficult transition. So I'm just wondering if there were any moments you remember in that first year, particularly probably in the first year, where you're like, I have to have a head coach conversation with this guy. And 2 years ago, I was sitting next to him in the locker room as his teammate.
You know, it's fun. The hardest one was Matt Reese, right? And because Matt Reese was a neighbor too, right? So now he lives, at the time I could throw a football to his house. We lived in Brandywine and Franklin. And I remember at the time, the way the contracts work, I remember my first hard conversation was Mike Burns. This is my favorite Mike. He's like, how old are you, Matt? I've been hired. He's like, how old do you know, Matt? He's like, he has a high option. Like, remember, he was a high paid keeper at the time and he was getting this. And I remember meeting with Matt at a cafe and being like, hey, Matt, it'd be great if we could, if you could take a pay cut, we're either not going to pick up your option. If you take a pay cut, then we can maybe give you a 2-year guarantee at a lower number, but it's guaranteed over 2 years. And I remember Matt going, it was one of those where I'm like, either that, we're not going to pick up your option. I says, you got to make your call. And I was the one telling them this. And so, that was my very first hard conversation. And I think Mike thought it was, I took it on because I was like, man, I believe in you. And I actually think you should get the 2-year contract because I need you here for at least a couple years into this. Because you remember, he got hurt in 2013 in that playoff game and retired pretty much after that. So this was 2012 or 2011 going into 12. And there was a ton of turnover on the team. And Mike's point was, look, if he does this, we keep him. If he doesn't, we can't pick up his contract because we don't want to guarantee, we don't want to pick up a pretty big salary on a 30. I don't know how he was, 30. Well, I guess I was 33, so he was probably 36 at the time. Or 30. Was I 35, I guess? So he was 37,
yeah,
maybe.
35.
Yeah. So that was the hardest one. And Matt's awesome about it. I think it was a little awkward for our families at first because he thought we should pick up his option. And I said, well, that's not, did I agree with that or not agree? I go, it doesn't matter. It's not on the table, right? Like it's either you're not here or this. So I'm fighting for you here. But he was, in those times, you don't totally feel, we've talked about it since. So that was my hardest one. And it was before I even stepped on the field. This was off season going in. Then getting on the field, I remember this. I'm trying to think of the guys I had Shari, Tierney.
Yeah, it was like some of the guys like Darius and Kevin Olsen, who he'd only played with briefly, but.
Right. But probably Shari was the one. And then I traded Shari.
Yeah.
We traded him to Chivas, and he was getting a new deal that we weren't going to give him. So I always felt like it was the right time for him to go get like his bigger contract, which he got. He wasn't thrilled with that one. I went to his house and told him. Those are times you don't want to put your coach in that, but because I was so close with him, I didn't want Mike to be the one telling him. And Mike wasn't as close with some of these guys. So I remember Mike's like, what do you want to do? We'll call him. I'm like, I got to go to his house. I got to tell Shari this in person. And so that was another tough one. In terms of coaching, I think most of the guys, and this is probably, I was not the best player on the field, so I had to show up every day. I had to work really hard. I took training really as seriously as the games. I worked really hard. So that was easy for me to ask them to do that. I wasn't walking in going, hey, I just, danced around for 7 years and now I'm going to be your head coach. It was much more like, hey, this is how I did as a player. This is how we need to do it as a team. And so trainings were intense. And I think a lot, that was what I enjoyed the most was being able to be true and honest to the fact that, hey, I may not know everything yet, what kind of coach I'm going to be, but I'll tell you right now, we're going to work hard in training. We're going to be accountable. We're going to be great teammates to each other, and we're going to try to get this thing back on track. And that was, for me, the 2013 team and the 2014 team, for me, were just some of the most fun coaching. And there was a lot of overlap. There was, Sharik came back for the final. Remember, Sharik came back in 14. Yeah. Matt played his heart out, and during that time, and 13, right around remember the Boston Marathon stuff coming out of it, and Bobby Shuttleworth came in. So I remember like Matt was not the starter in 13, but then took over the starting job midway through the season, and then he got hurt in that final game where Farrell had to play goalie the last play of the game. And then the next one was Bobby Shuttleworth, and I love seeing Bobby Shuttleworth take off and become a really good goalkeeper, for those next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, man, I think people who haven't been at the Revs for more than 10 years at this point, who didn't experience that 2014 run, are sick of those of us who were here in 2014 talking about what that 2014 season was like, because it was so magical. And obviously it fell just short of the ultimate desired goal. But I still have so many unbelievable memories from that 2014 season. And I still occasionally find myself, I'll just go back and I'll rewatch like the long highlight packages of the first leg in New York and the second leg at home.
Unbelievable.
I'll watch MLS Cup up until Tierney's equalizer and then shut it off. Yep. But it was just, that was a really, really magical season. It was a magical team. The vibe around it was incredible. And, that's like, those are the types of things that keep you going, right? It's because you have experiences like that. And then you're like, when things aren't going as well, you have those in the back of your head, and like, that's what drives you forward. It's like, I want to get back to that. So I want to get back to 2014, man.
That's what I hope. I always say, because we were, 13 was back in the playoffs. 2012 was my first year. We didn't make playoffs, and it was, new team figuring it out. But 13 was just like, all right, we're getting there. 14 felt like, all right, we were really good. We had a run of terrible games in the middle of that, but we always felt like we were going to get back on. And then obviously, everyone's like, we got Jermaine Jones. I'm like, no, Jermaine Jones was like more, he was like Lee Wynn, Kellen Rowe, AJ Soares, Charlie Davies, Chris Tierney, like those guys, Scott Caldwell. I think of those guys, obviously, they were just amazing. Jesuit and Calvez. And then when Jermaine came in, it was like, I was like fuel, right? It was just like more fire. That just took this thing from like pretty good to the next level. And his mentality was really important. I mean, we always talk about the Tony Chani story, right? I'm sure Tierney tells you about it. But when Tony Chani said, "Oh, we don't need to stop Jermaine Jones. We just need to stop Lee Wynn," and so we played them at Columbus. And I remember pulling Jermaine in. I'm like, "Hey, Tommy and I were thinking about," because remember the time, no one really everyone tried to high press him, but they'd play through it. And so we were like, playoff game, should we sit back and kind of like, and I remember we made a decision. We're like, we're just going to go for it. We're going to high press him and try to, jam him. And Jermaine's like, I don't give a shit what we do. He's like, we're going to win this game. I mean, he was, because all it took was to show that one quote from Tony Chani. And it was the first time I've ever seen him go. He was the first time he was ever the first on the field. And he walked right through their warm up and pointed at Tony and was like, you're going down. And that point, we were like, all right. We're going to high press. No matter what we're going to do, we are going to win this game, because Jermaine was in another level of intensity, and everyone fed off of that. So I think of that one as one of the special ones. I'll be honest, I really enjoy Greg Berhalter, but he was so arrogant that year. And for us to go into there, like, they never thought in a trillion years we were going to beat them at their place the way we did. And then we came back and smashed them at home, which is like one of the greatest, because they just felt like they were, and look, they went to them a couple of years, the year after that, but they were just super proud of themselves. And I still felt like while we were pretty good, we also had that, like, New England kind of mentality of like, all right, this is going to suck, but we're going to get through it and we're going to be better for it.
7-3 on aggregate. That was definitely the moment where you realized, okay, well, now you're going into the Eastern Conference Final against the Red Bulls with the second leg at home, and there's a real chance to do something here. What a year. Well, Jay, we cannot thank you enough for taking the time to sit with us for an hour here and walk us through old stories and reminisce a little bit. It's been an absolute blast. Really hope that you enjoy the off season. Hope you and the family enjoy the holidays. Best of luck as you get Birmingham ready for 2026. And then hopefully we'll see you back here in Foxborough really soon for some more fun alumni events.
I owe my youngest son, Jude, who was there, he learned math by knowing 45 plus 45 was 90. Like, he's a smart kid, but everything's based upon soccer. And he would be after games talking about the table. So he would come down and we used to have the table on the wall, and he would come in after game and be like, you guys need to adjust that. You guys just jumped up ahead of that team. And so my son, it's funny, I know I'm going to end this, but my favorite thing about the Revs during that time was we were really good at home. Even the year I got fired, we still won 10 games at home.
Best home record, and it's still the best home record in club history. Yeah.
Was it that year? Was it really?
Even that's better. I think it was the same record as, or maybe even one game better than the 2021 record-setting season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we were good at home, and so that's I swear it's because my son Jude wanted to come down and change the table every time, because that was where it was like Red Bulls go here, but he knew all the tables like this. Long story short, he wants to go back to a Revs game. He's in 9th grade now, and he hasn't been back in a minute, and so we're gonna go back, I think, sometime this spring for a game.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Nice.
I told him I'm taking him to Duke basketball. We're going to go up for this December. And he's like, I really want to see a Revolution soccer game. So it was
awesome.
He became, after, I always say this, after I got fired, he was like, well, Revs. And then when Bruce Arena took over, I'm close with Bruce. I didn't ever really get along with Brad that well. I don't know Brad that well, but I hated what he talked about our group and our team. He used us as kind of a scapegoat, which was kind of BS. But when Bruce took over, I was thrilled. I love Bruce. And so I remember bringing down like a couple of jerseys, Revs jerseys, and he's like, we can wear them again. And I'm like, we're back in. He's like, took a little hiatus, but we owe him a game now. That's what we owe the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Well, we'll welcome you back with open arms. We can't wait to see you. And thanks again for taking the time to take a walk down memory lane.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. Enjoyed it. Good luck, guys. Talk
Thank
soon.
you as well to our presenting sponsor, Massachusetts 250. Plan your visit at massachusetts250.org. Did I say Massachusetts?
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
Yeah. Yep.
Revolutions start here. Come see what's next. And what's next on the Far Post podcast at this point is 2026. We're going to take a moment here to reset, relax, enjoy the holidays, and then we're heading into 2026 with a fresh mindset, optimistic for the future, and we'll see everybody in 2026.
Bye.
See you.